So the second panel is going to tackle the issue of a danger to cancel the single project development scheme. And this is quite, how shall I say, important for small countries because we would not be able to apply. Single project development scheme is one of the most important schemes for small countries, including the festivals and the distribution, automatic distribution. And you can see that still, you cannot hear me, sorry, 2018 and 2019 again, the majority of the total budget goes to the big five, even though they were against the automatic points for projects coming from small countries. We also did a simulation in 2018, so you have a total requested amount, total allocated amount, and then the simulation with automatic points. It's much different if we would have those automatic points, because then we would have more projects supported coming from the small countries. We are still working on the simulation of the automatic points, but things haven't changed in terms of the budgeting our projects. When it comes to the slate, well, I must say we, as a small country, are kind of successful in the slate funding. But lately, I've been confronted with evaluators evaluating the projects coming from small countries, really writing in the evaluation that such production companies cannot develop 3 projects at the same time. And against the rule, they're also not giving this money as a pre-financing until a production company develops 2 projects within the slate funding scheme. And this is against the rules, because if a production company has 1 million turnover throughout the year and has those success stories at the film festivals, and it's quite, how shall I say, present at the European level, so who decides that this production company cannot make it and then changes the rules and goes against the guidelines? This is the situation in 2019. Okay, so I would kindly ask the second team for the second panel, starting with Ankica, Tamara, and Damir. So, warm welcome. Since everything is fine, Ankica doesn't have to leave that early. Damir is here with us, so we are all fine, so you can sit as you like it. All of you have, in one way or the other, the experience in applying the projects to the media. And I'm really curious, do evaluators always understand our budgets and our diversity of projects, our collaborations with our neighbors? Is it a more plus or sometimes negative point? Who would like to start? Ankica.
Well, it's more of minus than a plus. It's very similar to the thing I was saying about Almodovar. You know, it's if you, for example, when you are explaining your marketing and distribution strategy, coming from a small country and knowing very well European market, you go with a realistic estimate, saying my film will be distributed in Slovenia and Macedonia and blah blah blah, and you barely dare to dream about German distribution. And then whoever is an expert knows that you are realistic, and you should be awarded points for being realistic, for not having, you know, illusions about marketing potential and distribution potential of your film. But then on the other hand, we got the comments like, we are thinking about region, not about Europe. Yes, I think about Europe, I dream about Europe, but you know, I know that only if I get an award in Cannes or in Berlin, I can distribute my film in Norway. There is no other way I can do it. So we struggle all the time. I mean, at least I do when I write these applications. I struggle all the time in between being a realistic professional that really knows European market or trying to please someone's expectations on how does the application needs to look to be approved. And by the way, I also got this comment that because my company, we raised Slate 3 times, but failed to raise Slate 1 time, with this comment that having only one strong producer in the company, we cannot make all these projects. At the end, I made them all. One of them was Quit Staring at My Plate, a highly successful film. One of them was Road Patrol TV series that I produced for national TV. Anyway, all the projects that I had in Slate were produced later, but the estimate was that I cannot make it, you know. But I mean, it's...
Yeah, there is an awkward situation when it comes to the categorization of countries. You have, for example, Luxembourg in the category of small countries. Luxembourg is a small country, but the projects coming from Luxembourg are really high-budget projects. And unfortunately, sometimes evaluators, they put all of us in the same pot. They really don't take into consideration the origin of the country, the small territory, and the small language, and are natural collaborators. How are your experiences with the media?
I have a little bit less experience than Ankica, as I got only one slate.
But you also got the single project.
I had a single project,
I would like
yes.
to remind.
Yes, thank you. In fact, what I wanted to say is that I'm really sorry if this single project will stop, and if because also, if you remember, I was a few years ago there was a discussion about how the single project functions, and for me, what is really strange is that during 1 year, one producer can apply only with one project for the single project. Usually, we have several projects in development and discussing with directors. And if you choose one of them, then the others are angry, in fact, that you didn't apply with their projects. And that it is a big problem, in fact. I don't understand why a company cannot apply with several single projects, and then someone can decide and evaluate those projects, and then decide, okay, from your 4 or 5 projects, we will choose this one. You are restricted to one, and then it's really a big problem for, let's say, for me, it is. I suppose for my colleagues as well. Regarding, I mean, you know, I like to put things in context usually, and all this story of media and applications and distribution and production. We are in a really, I mean, European film is not in a good position, I think, and locally the regional former Yugoslavia is also not in a good position. We are practically close to, and even it is difficult for us to distribute Croatian, for example, Croatian films in former Yugoslavia countries, because now it's like we are not. We are talking different languages and different. Okay, we have similar culture, but in one way, but on the other, it's not really the same market, and it's different. Crossing the borders is really difficult. So this is one thing that it's frustrating for producers, and making all these applications and trying to persuade someone when you know yourself that it's sometimes impossible, or you can invent and project and plan that you will have a big distribution, but in fact, I mean, it's not realistic. This is one thing. The other thing is, so we have to be, if we are honest, we have to think of what really at this moment, how we can handle the stuff. And this is more or less, let's say, regional distribution, for example. only in cases of big festivals, awards on these festivals, then you can make a step further and then do some really extraordinary thing. For example, Ankica is talking of High Sun. I mean, it's a film that is 5 years old, you know, and in between there was nothing really important happening. So during these 5 years, there was no film of this success.
I disagree.
Okay, you will tell us later. I'll pass the mic.
At the Academy.
Sorry? This is one thing. One other problem is what we were talking about. I mean, is the world sales. For example, also the world sales is something that we all think is a solution, and we all are trying to find the world sales in advance or once we finish it, and we're very happy that we have a world sales. But realistically, also, it's just a try to make our films visible. So nowadays, as producer, I must say that the only goal is to make a film visible as more as possible, because there is no money. If you get world sales, you will never see the money, even if maybe you are lucky that you saw the money from the 30 countries. I never saw any money. Even when from films that were successful, I mean, like Armin and these are the rules that were on big festivals and all that. But unfortunately, the world sales present their costs and all that so high that they spend all the money they get on expenses. So this is one thing that, in fact, we as producers cannot accumulate any money for development. It's all the time we are, you know, suffocating, in fact, and trying to. I founded the company. It's an established company in Croatia, so it's like 27 years. Now it's 28 years that we exist permanently, and it's every time trying to. Can we make it for the next project? And I don't know how the new coming companies will make it, you know. How can they start? And I will pass the word.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, we don't know either, but we're trying. In my point of view is that, you know, when you come to an age when you start seeing your parents as humans, and you understand that they don't really know always what they're doing. Well, I think that's what's happening to tiny countries in Europe when they're looking at Brussels right now. I think Brussels is, at least on this topic, confused on at least 3 levels. First, I think Brussels is very confused on what is Europe, because most of the countries that make Europe are smaller countries with limited language scope, and with budgets that are under 2 million euro per feature-length film, usually around 1. So this is Europe also. And I think Brussels really needs to go to the map and check it out a bit. The second level, I think, on which Brussels is very confused is what is sustainability. Because when you're a young company and you develop projects, you also need to, well, even if you're not a young company, you need to have a business model that, in Europe, that you do several things. And as we see, companies from smaller countries need to have it even when they are 20 years old, because their passive income, which any company that does any business and creates added value in any place in economy, not only audiovisual sector, after a while is supposed to have some passive income. And when you come from a small country, you usually don't get there. Because you don't get the sales, because you don't get to the platforms, because if you go to the platforms, your film is not visible. And so you want to apply with a single project. I understand why media wants to cancel it. Media wants to cancel it because they think it's too expensive to sustain. I think that they should get a manager that will help them to make their own business model on how to make it sustainable, because I think it's poor organization and not too big of an expense. So when you're a small company, you're starting, you cannot have a slate of 7 projects because you cannot do that physically. You're also not eligible for the first 3 years. You also need to do some other things, as we all know, to become eligible, but maybe you can try with 1. But then you will not be able to, because if you don't have, the trick is you're in a circle. If you're not strong enough to develop, you will not get the money, but also you will not develop if you don't get the money. So there's no answer to that. And this is, I think, where we need to clear up this confusion on what sustainability is and what do we want to be sustainable and how is that facilitated with this kind of support. And I'm all for this support because I think that history has taught us, and if someone is still in doubt whether the market should be regulated or not, then just check out what's happening in Australia in the past few weeks. Because this is directly connected, and economists know that. So the fact that we have, which Chris said in the beginning, such a well-regulated market of audiovisual sector in Europe is a huge benefit, and I don't think we should lose it. The third thing from really here, exactly in Croatia, where I think Brussels is confused, is what is partnership. I started my primary school in '92, and I remember what was happening then. And I know that Europe really wanted us all to make peace with each other. So we made peace with each other. So now we cooperate again, like 40 years ago. But now it's a problem that we're cooperating again. So I think Brussels also needs to decide whether they want us to cooperate or not. I was under the impression that that was the aim of Europe. And yes, of course, you're going to cooperate with those who have a similar level of budget, similar interest in stories, where the language barrier is not as huge as between us and Luxembourg, with whom we have all kinds of barriers. So, what is it really that we're trying to do as Europe? That's an answer that needs to be given.
Yes. The second highlight is taking the responsibility, because I don't think that this operational agency sometimes takes the responsibility for being late, for example, with results. And this is where I come to your point that actually that those people who are managing the calls are not producers and have never produced any films, nor are aware that when you are waiting for the media results, you're not sitting at home and doing nothing. You also have other obligations towards your partners, co-producers, and you need to fulfill certain obligations. And the problem is that they changed some time ago the rule that once when you apply, you need to tick in the application that this is the date of the eligibility period to start with your expenses starts with the date of submission, but you need to wait 8 months until the first date of shooting. But somehow in between the lines you also need to wait for Brussels with the results, and if they are late, oh sorry, your project is not eligible. And the most recent example is that, and this is really, for me, outrageous, that they still were late with the results of the second deadline from April. And they announced the call for this calendar year with the deadline 30th of November, and the results from April were announced 18th of November, so 7 months late. And nobody is taking responsibility. We, as media desks, we asked them to prolong the deadline of the call, and they really didn't want to listen. Let us see if Damir wants to share some thoughts regarding the results and being late with results, because this was quite challenging for you.
Yes. So this is a problem also, as we talked before, that leaders of the European Union probably don't know how it works in our film business. But also, it seems that the agency doesn't know how it works, because those people don't understand that there are many things that had to be put together when you prepare to shoot a feature film. In this way, that for example, we had a really big problem for the slate application in 2017. We applied with 3 projects, and one of the projects we have written the schedule, shooting end of August. And the results of that call was had to be in June, so it was 2 months before the shooting. And I even forgot, honestly, that we did apply, you know, because we had to start to shoot, and there was no results. So
nobody communicated anything.
Nobody communicated. Yeah. We didn't know. We didn't even get a notice that they will be late with results. So in somewhere in the middle of the shooting, I got an information from the agency that we got the slate. I said, fantastic, it's good. I even forgot it. And one of the projects of the slate was that we were in the middle of the shooting, and so we got the slate. But 10 days later, they said, unfortunately, the project we were shooting, it cannot be in the slate because we are in shooting. So the money is for development. Then I was in trouble, because if you have one less, then all the slate is falling apart. And so they said, just replace it and we will be okay. And then, but this is strictly internal. Don't talk about it, because I don't want to have trouble with media, and you as well, please. And then I had, fortunately, one project ready for a replacement, but that project was rejected for a single project previously, and of course I didn't tell them. And then I put that. And we won't tell. But I mean, Martina knows that. Because we were all the time talking about what to do. And then, of course, and what was really great is that, fortunately, and also I have to mention, when I told to the director we got the slate and money for development of the film that we were shooting, Ognjen Silicic, he celebrated that evening that we got the money. And 10 days later I said, well, unfortunately we will not get the money, but fortunately I had this other project of his ex-wife. So, yes, so it worked. So he was not really angry. I said, okay. I mean, he said, then it's okay. But this is really, in this unfortunate situation, fortunate conditions that I had. Altogether, and Martina said, well, we have to warn the agency that they made a mistake, they were late, and you got in trouble. I said, yes, please, but let's get this slate, and then, you know, we will talk about it later, because you never know when you can jeopardize all the, you know, there was 2 other, of course, projects. Altogether, what is the point is that really the administration of the agencies and nothing happened, you know, they were just like, it's like that, you have to accept it, no complaints or nothing, and that's it. I say that I had all the situation that could work for me, but it could be really a disaster, you know. So this is something that is my experience, and the experience is that the bureaucracy and administration of the European is not much better than Croatian. Even I would say sometimes we have a better one.
Just to add something. So the problem is when it comes to the communication. You know, so we are also humans, and the agency does it. So the desk helps the applicants to apply, but then the desks are not informed when the applicants receive the funding. So what happens to me, I mean, Zagreb is a small town, I walk around and then I'm approached, we got it, and I'm like, I don't know, sorry. So now everybody knows that I don't know, and it's a bit absurd that desks are integral part of the media program, and we are 50% co-financed by Brussels, but I don't understand why they also don't communicate the results with us. They also, if they have any issues, problems, I mean, it's absurd to wait for the results 7 months because they're breaking the guidelines. The guidelines are quite obligatory when it comes to the applicants, because if you don't follow the guidelines, you're out of the picture. But then who takes the responsibility when they do mistake? You know, so those are also the issues at the agency that they need to really start saying sorry, or to move the deadline if they are late with the results for 7 months. And we are always on the same side. So we also help them in communication with the applicants as well, and we also want to help them, but so far not so successful.
I must say we got the first
the first financing. That's good. Yeah, the rest stays in the room. So I would also like to reflect on the lack of diversity when it comes to training initiatives, taking tutors from small countries and representing the case studies from small countries. Because until recently, you would go to a training initiative supported by the media, and you would only hear those great films by Almodovar, like The Budgets. You will learn on their case studies, and not even single small film being represented in terms of the budget, success story, distribution, and etc. Also, during festivals like Berlin and Cannes, we always go to European film forums. None of the panelists are coming from small countries. So it's, I like Ken Loach, but it's a bit enough to listen always to his producer's successful story. Let us hear more success stories from small countries. And I would like to come to Ankica and Tamara. So Ankica, after graduating the AVE in 2007, only last year became the group leader as a, let's say, tutor, having the group and teaching them. After such a long time, somebody from this region taking this job. And Tamara is, as I still consider a young film producer, is part of the executive board at the FIAF. So those changes are something that we need to see more often. So maybe you can elaborate on those experiences.
Yes, I can elaborate. I mean, nothing falls down from heaven to our lap. You know, I saw this sticker in New York saying, "If you see something, say something," and I really like this slogan. Because when I was a participant at AVE, and when I was smoking in front of the hotel with the head of the studies, he was asking, "Is everything okay? Are you pleased with the program? Blah, blah, blah." And I was saying, "No, this thing doesn't work, this thing doesn't work, this thing doesn't work." And then when I did ACE later, I was complaining all the time. Why do we listen only about Germany? Why do we have so many UK examples? Why do we have so many UK mentors? You know, I was, all the time I was aware, because you are in a situation when you are paying for the program. It doesn't matter if you got the grant or not. Actually, you are giving the same amount of money as a German participant, and he gets 80% more than you get, because it's all about big models. So I was actually complaining all the time, because none of these workshops or programs fit my needs. So I was actually talking to right people. I wasn't sitting in the bar saying this is not right. I was really going to heads of the studies, of writing, you know, because sometimes you get to write comments. I was always pointing to that. Small countries are underrepresented in your program. You need to do something about that. So you really, if you feel this need, if you see a problem, you need to point it out. There is no need, there is no use in complaining about it with your friends. You need to do something to change things. And you also need to do some work in that respect. I mean, you need to, I mean, people, for example, I don't know how many of you know that you are eligible to be members of European Film Academy, or that you can access media as an expert, because you can. You just need to be informed. You need to ask for information, and you will find out that you can be an expert coming from Croatia, evaluating other people's projects. If you have references, you can do it, but you need to look for the opportunities where you can help small countries or countries like ours that are underdogs.
It's good to have you on board, yeah. So, Tamara, your experiences.
I completely agree with Ankica about if you see something, say something. EAVE is a very good example of this diversity changing very much, because I was attending this year when Ankica was first-time group leader, which I was so super proud of. I mean, Ankica, not me. And 2 of the 4 group leaders were from small countries. What I noticed in my group was that guys from higher budget level countries, as I would call them, actually looked a lot to the rest of the room, which was most of us from lower budget level countries, because we had a lot of invention to offer them. And it was a very good exchange, and this works, you know, when we're combined. It works, it's useful, but no one should be dominant for it to work. You know, if it's like 3 guys from our region, and then, as you know, my colleague who is somewhere in the audience now had an experience, you know, it was a marketing workshop, and then there was this lady from Wide, and she said, well, if you don't get into Cannes, we don't consider your film. Okay, and you pay for 4 days of that. That's not useful. And we are the ones who are supposed to tell them it's not useful. Also, I think what's good with the benefit that smaller and more underdogish countries bring to the big table is that we have very little to lose, which means we sometimes have a lot less fear of speaking out. And we say it as we see it, and because, you know, very little is at stake for us. So I think part of the reasons why in several places where I go during the year I'm accepted at the big table is not because I'm particularly smarter than someone else, or because I travel more, or because my projects are better, but because I'm really, you know, have this more childlike perspective where I just say it as it is, and it's refreshing for the room, and then the rest of the people start speaking as well. Because we live in a culture of fear, let's be honest. We live in a culture of fear, both in Europe and in the United States. I cannot speak about the entire Asia because I don't know the territory, but our Western culture is at the moment a culture of fear. A fear of actually speaking out, a fear of actually bringing the you know, substantial questions of why we're here, what we're actually doing, and what's the point of it all. We're afraid to ask those questions, because we're afraid that the system will break, and the system maybe, you know, needs to be mended in ways and can be mended if we ask those questions.
May I ask you something? Since you just started at the international level at VIAF, have you ever discussed issues regarding the media sub-program or anything in terms of the small versus medium versus big?
Honestly, it was mentioned and spoke of a bit, but the new package of directives is what takes most of the attention in the last 2 or 3 years in this arena. So media is mentioned, but it's a bit on the sidelines, to be honest.
And is the organization also invited to one-to-one meetings with Brussels?
Well, that organization has a lot of one-to-one meetings in Brussels, so.
Okay. Okay. You.
Yes, I just want to say one thing before, because I suppose that we'll end soon, and this is actually your first point about the single. I think that the future of the industry actually relies on young people and young companies. And I think it's really crucial to help young companies and young people, and especially in small countries, because if you live in a country where, I don't know, 10 films are produced per year, feature-length films, then it is really likely probable that you will have a slate until your company is 10 years old. So I think this single project support is crucial for the development of the film industry in general, because you need to invest into new producers, new companies, new talents, and not because it's administratively, it's a lot of work for them, but I think the profit for the audiovisual industry is huge, because you need to pour some fresh blood into industry every now and then. This is why I think this single is crucial. It should be kept.
Strengthened in terms of the financing.
Yes.
Regarding the young filmmakers, young production companies, it was much easier before 2014, because the track record was only the festival screening. But nowadays, it's not only that you need to produce a film within the 5 years, but you also need to distribute it outside your national territory. And regarding the young filmmakers, I was really surprised, because I followed the previous media from 2008 until 2013. We also had a special call for young filmmakers just graduating from the film academies, collaboration between the film academies, and then all of a sudden in 2014 it was cut and removed to Erasmus. And since media does not recognize shorts, short films are very important for our future, for future well-established producers and film directors. And then we of course complained, and the only way that you could support a short film is within the slate funding scheme, which was successful for your slate. But other than that, students and our future film professionals have difficulties to find their proper place. So it's a bit a tricky situation. Since both of you are at the Academy of Dramatic Arts, Damir, you also collaborated with some of your ex-students when it comes to the media program in terms of the cluster. I'm coming to the notion, is it now easier for the small countries to apply for slate, since we still are keeping the automatic points? Or would you prefer to have this possibility to apply with different single projects to different calls? Would you like to change the notion of the slate for a small country? To have possibility to apply at every single deadline with one single?
I think that the single projects are a much better solution for especially upcoming producers, because then it takes quite a lot of energy to raise money for one project and develop it. But then if you have a second one, then it's for the slate you have to have really at least 3 ready in a way that you did already start kind of development. You must have some money. First of all, you have to have all the scripts translated in English at least. So it's some money for the translation and all. So for that, I think you have to be better established. You cannot start feature projects as a slate. I mean, it's much better as single projects for new small companies. Regarding you mentioned the short films. Yes, it's a pity that there is not some niche that would help developing even short films, because it is the starting point of many directors. Even in film schools, we of course have only short films. Also, the short films now, before some 10 years, the short films were in fact films around 30 minutes. Now it's between 10 and 15 minutes, in fact, on festivals. So it's really something that is showing the talent of the filmmakers, and even for these 10-15 minutes you have to raise money. And to develop it and all that. So it would be really nice to have this part, if it would be possible to open it and to have some money for the development of short films. Even it's a problem then later, because practically except for festivals you can't distribute it. I mean, it's really hard.
Which is why I think that maybe short films could have a place in when you apply as a sales agent or a distributor for distribution support. We had this lovely habit a long time ago that I don't think why it wouldn't exist now, that before you put in a feature length, you put in a short. If a short is 15 minutes, it doesn't take that much time. You know, in Zagreb, in a multiplex, you have 30 minutes of commercials. And they take support for distribution, as far as I know. Why wouldn't they be obliged to have 15 minutes of commercials and 15-minute short film, if they're getting the money for it? And if they're usually getting the money for films, they're going to distribute anyhow, because they can get the audiences already in their scheme to come to the cinemas.
I think I would never introduce the shorts into this development scheme of media. Because it's a development fund. Either slate or single, it's a development fund. And for a short film, this development process is not long or painful or expensive. So I think that distribution help is a good idea, but for development, I don't think it's so important. I think it's on the film funds to encourage short film co-productions. Our fund is, for example, one of the very few in Europe that supports co-production of short films, which is a great experience for a young filmmaker, both producer and the director, to work on a short as a co-production. But I don't think the place of the shorts is because the development is really, really not extensive or expensive.
Coming back to the first issue I highlighted in the first panel, transparency of results when it comes to co-productions, majority, minority. Would you like to see it more transparent? Maybe Tamara. What happens is the following. So because production, some countries are not eligible as being the media country, so they use the production company coming from the media country. This is eligible. Using the track record of the production company. But then the idea, the director of the project is not visible in the results. And sometimes I was also approached that when the results are published, those projects are not creation, they are co-productions, and this needs to be stated. And in some of the cases, projects take place in a different country with a different director, who is non-creation. And I'm trying to see if there is a way we can organize it better.
I don't think it's an issue if a Croatian company has in their slates also. I don't think it should be an issue that any country's producer in their slate decide to work with an artist from another country. I think that if we are one Europe and if we are exchanging, we should have the self-confidence and be emancipated in that way that we can also sometimes share this talent in that way. I think it's also okay that it's under certain conditions, so that the countries would be, their culture would be protected in a sense, as it is. But I think it's okay to collaborate in that way. And I think it's also okay that if a Croatian company gets the money, or a Slovenian or Luxembourg, whatever, that it goes into those results of that country in media. But I also think it's really beneficial. I think from a PR standpoint, it's beneficial for the agency to set clearly, okay, we have countries from these, companies from these countries, they're working with these artists, these are the titles of the projects, this is the genre, and this is how much money we gave them. And then a few years later, these are the results. I think it's not really that much because, you know, we are at a loss if it's not transparent in that way. I think the agency is at a loss because they're not really presenting how good a work they're doing with it. So I would look at it from that standpoint, you know. Do your PR, guys, because you're doing the good work. You have all the lovely people at media desks. Give them the proper information so that they can really promote what you're doing, and so that you get more and more support from these countries that you're servicing in that way.
Because, for example, when it comes to the slate funding, it's only the company name and the amount. So, of course, I'm always contacting producers. I mean, I'm also involved before the application, during the application, but still I don't understand why they cannot also give the titles of and shorts as well included in the slate.
Yeah, and maybe we would have different results. Maybe they would show more diversity. Maybe, you know, a company from France sometimes takes a project from a smaller country in their slate, you know, as a partnership. So maybe, you know, there's more diversity than we think, but we don't know. So I would, you know, compel the agency to let us know.
Okay, yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? Those who want to apply or... no, everything clear? Okay, would you like to add something? You're already living to one of the markets supported by media, yes. When East meets West. It was also difficult to organize panel there because also among colleagues, there are colleagues and the colleagues, you know. So we from the region, we also try to contribute by suggesting the names, and Ankica is participating on one of the panels, and then I ask, okay, we have West and where is the East? Because we are considered to be the East. And then I had...
I'm not East.
But let's put it in a simple way.
Southeast, okay, but yeah. East.
We're Southern Comfort.
Okay, that's even better.
No, sorry for the joke.
But it was difficult to suggest the names, and I was approached by the colleague from Torino, from Italy, and I don't understand. You know, we need to collaborate, but then on the other hand, when we really need to collaborate, it's a bit difficult. So I'm very happy that you're participating on a panel together with the German representative.
At the market that is called When East Meets West.
Yes.
So
yeah,
that's the absurdity.
Yeah, the East. Yeah. So. What I just also wanted to, yes, and just the last thing I would like to change and to close this, to alert and to close this panel, it's regarding those training initiatives and scholarships being offered. Sometimes, you know, when you go to a country which is your neighboring country, this also needs to be taken into consideration. But for example, Polish producers, when they're going to attend the training initiative in Czech Republic, they cannot apply for scholarship, but producers from Luxembourg can. So, because they are a small country. We don't go into details that they have much more money and stuff, but it's also understanding the environment, our neighbors, and the collaborations.
I think it's also because there are very few people in Luxembourg.
But everybody moves.
So they're not going to be that many asking for a scholarship. Hopefully. As from Poland, which is a huge country.
Yeah, they want to say.
And has really elaborate, you know, production. I mean, great producers and great films.
Yeah. Okay, so Ankica is going to leave us, but we also came to an end to the second panel. So we want the single project development kept, and more strengthened in terms of the financing, because there is really not enough financing when it comes to the development. Just remember, 15% for the development, 70% to distribution. So, and we need to...
And I think the whole thing about communication should just be, they should just communicate better with media desks, because at least to my knowledge, all of them are great. So it's not about they need to communicate with the whole professional field. They just need to pass the information to you, and you'll pass it to us, and vice versa. Either being late 6 months with the result, or stressing the importance of single, for example.
We are working on it, so yeah. So applause for our 3 panelists. Thank you.